Look around you. The device in your hand, the electric car on the street, the wind turbine on the horizon. They are the symbols of our age, of connection, mobility, and a greener future. But inside each is a battlefield, not of soldiers, but of elements. Gallium, which powers 5G networks. Germanium, essential for fiber optics and night vision. The family of rare earths, the silent heart of magnets and motors and generators. For decades, the world outsourced the dirty, complex work of digging and refining these vital materials. One nation answered the call more comprehensively than any other: China. Now, the supply chain we built for efficiency has become a chain of dependency. And in Beijing, there's a growing recognition that when you control the elements that build the modern world, you don't just have an economic advantage, you have a weapon. In the summer of 2023, the theoretical became real. Beijing announced export controls on two minerals most people had never heard of, gallium and germanium. It was a surgical strike.
These aren't just obscure metals, they are fundamental to advanced semiconductors, military-grade sensors, and the entire telecommunications backbone. The official reason given was national security, a justification used by nations worldwide.
But the timing was unmistakable, coming shortly after the United States and its allies intensified their own restrictions on selling high-end microchips to China. This wasn't a trade dispute over steel or solar panels. This felt different. It was the first clear signal of a strategic shift where China's decades-long dominance in mineral processing was being leveraged. The question the world's capitals are now asking is no longer if China will use its resource power, but how, when, and with what devastating effect on Western technology and its ambitious green energy transition. To understand this new global chessboard, we must first understand the scale of the imbalance. So where the minerals are mined. Australia is a leading producer of lithium, the Democratic Republic of Congo for cobalt. The true power lies in the next step, processing. The complex, often polluting, and technically demanding work of turning raw ore into the ultra-pure materials industry needs. And here, China's position is not just dominant, it is overwhelming. For years, the West was content to offshore this industry, chasing lower costs and avoiding environmental headaches. The result is a dependency starkly illustrated by the numbers. China isn't just one player among many. In many critical supply chains, it is the only game in town. This concentration of power is unprecedented, creating a strategic vulnerability that was ignored for decades but is now impossible to overlook. Every green pledge and technological leap in the West is in some way underwritten by this industrial reality. But is this dominance wielded as a weapon of coercion? Or is it a calculated act of self-preservation? The critique of this view is compelling. To label China's actions purely as aggression is to ignore the context. These mineral controls did not occur in a vacuum. They followed years of escalating American sanctions, blacklists, and the CHIPS Act, a policy explicitly designed to kneecap China's technological advancement. From Beijing's perspective, the West fired the first shots in this tech war. Their export controls could be seen not as an opening salvo, but as a defensive response, a signal that they too have levers to pull. Furthermore, attributing intent is a perilous game. Without access to internal government deliberations, we are left to interpret actions. Are these controls designed to actively disrupt the West, or are they a rational economic strategy to secure high-value industries at home? And move up the value chain, a goal stated in their 5-year plans for over a decade? The line between national security, economic strategy, and geopolitical coercion is not just thin, it may not exist at all. The wake-up call, however interpreted, has been heard. From Washington to Brussels to Tokyo, a new consensus has emerged. The dependency on China is an unacceptable risk. The response is a multi-trillion-dollar effort under a new banner of de-risking. It's a strategy built on two pillars, reshoring and friend-shoring. Reshoring aims to bring mining, and crucially, processing back to home soil. Friendshoring involves building new, resilient supply chains with the allied nations, Canada, Australia, and members of the European Union. Initiatives like the American Inflation Reduction Act and the EU's Critical Raw Materials Act are pouring hundreds of billions into this generational project. We see a flurry of activity, long abandoned mines being surveyed for reopening, plans for new refineries being drawn up, and a wave of diplomatic missions forming new alliances like the Mineral Security Partnership. The political intent is clear: to build a parallel ecosystem free from the coercive potential of any single state. But while the political will has mobilized, the physical reality presents a staggering challenge. Decades of offshoring cannot be reversed overnight. Announcing billions in investment is one thing. Building a complex processing plant, navigating environmental regulations, and training a skilled workforce can take a decade or more. And even then, the scale is daunting. China's current output doesn't just dwarf the West's, it dwarfs the West's most optimistic near-term projections. This is where skepticism takes hold. Critics argue these initiatives, while politically essential, are currently more a signal of intent than a substantive shift in the balance of power. The risk is that while the West spends 10 years building one refinery, China, with its state-led industrial capacity, can build 3. Furthermore, this race is not static. Technological breakthroughs, like new battery chemistries that don't require cobalt or lithium, could upend the entire landscape. For now, however, the West is playing a game of catch-up on a field heavily tilted in their opponent's favor. This isn't just a two-player game. The intense focus on the US-China rivalry often obscures a more complex and fluid reality: the rise of the resource-rich global South and other powers. This is not the old colonial model where Western companies simply extracted wealth. Today, nations like Indonesia, home to the world's largest nickel reserves, are flexing their industrial muscle. They've banned the export of raw nickel ore, forcing companies to build processing plants within their borders, capturing more value and jobs. In South America's Lithium Triangle, Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile, governments are forming new alliances to coordinate policy and demand better terms. Meanwhile, other players are entering the fray. Russia is developing mineral resources in its Arctic territories, while Gulf monarchies like Saudi Arabia, seeking to diversify from oil, are investing billions to become major players in African mining. This is the new resource diplomacy, a multipolar scramble where the rules are being rewritten, not just in Washington or Beijing. But does this activity truly signify a new multipolar order? Or is it simply adding new layers to the existing US-China duopoly? Skeptics argue that the agency of these emerging players is often overstated. Indonesia may be building a nickel empire, but much of the investment and technology behind it is Chinese. African nations may host vast mineral wealth, but they often lack the capital and infrastructure to develop it themselves, forcing them to choose between deals offered by Beijing or Washington. They become battlegrounds, not independent shapers of destiny. Russia's ambitions are curtailed by sweeping international sanctions, limiting its access to markets and technology. And while Gulf investment is significant, it often aligns with broader U.S. strategic interests in the region. The core of the issue remains processing. Without the ability to refine raw materials into high-value products, resource-rich nations remain dependent. They may be able to play the superpowers off against each other for a better deal, but they are still, for the most part, playing their game. So we are left with a landscape of profound uncertainty. The narrative of simple Chinese coercion is complicated by its own defensive logic. The story of a confident Western resurgence is undermined by the sheer scale of the industrial challenge it faces. And the vision of a new multipolar world order is tempered by the enduring gravitational pull of the two great powers. The truth is, all these forces are in play simultaneously. The global system is not shifting from one state to another, it is fracturing. Alliances are fluid. Technological black swans, like a breakthrough in battery recycling or the discovery of a massive new mineral deposit, could change the equation overnight. What is verifiable is the demand. The global energy transition and the digital revolution are non-negotiable. They will require quantities of critical minerals that dwarf anything humanity has produced before. The central unanswered question is how this demand will be met and whose hands will control the switches of the 21st century economy. Ultimately, the story of critical minerals comes back to the objects that define our lives. The phone that connects you to the world, the car that promises a cleaner commute, the medical scanner that sees inside the human body. These are no longer just products of commerce. They are artifacts of a geopolitical contest. Their future availability and price will be determined not just by engineers and markets, but by strategists in Beijing, legislators in Washington, and resource nationalists in Jakarta. The quiet, invisible supply chains that built our world have become the front lines of a new global conflict, an elemental conflict. The struggle for the raw materials of the future has just begun, and its outcome will shape the world we leave to the next generation.